If you're an introvert, you're going to love Rhonda George Denniston. You'll also love her if you're an extrovert, because she's awesome. But man, she really sees introverts in a way that the world needs. Rhonda is the Chief Learning and Development Officer at TBWA Worldwide. She also founded Curiosity Connections, an unnetworking space that brings people together in a way where everyone feels welcome and seen, with none of the awkward BS typical of most networking events. Her own experience as an introvert has created a blueprint for others to follow. She started at TBWA as an executive assistant and created her path at every step since. How'd she do it? She showed up, building a reputation for reliability and getting things done. She identified gaps. Why aren't we doing this? And said, wait, I can do this. She perfected her pitch. In deck-crazy industries like advertising, the way forward is through PowerPoint, or Keynote, or Google, or Canva, or whatever the kids are using these days. The programs she and her teams have created invite others to follow her lead, to create opportunities, find their own path, and show up in ways that allow them to shine. Rhonda shines brightly in this conversation, and she introduced me to a term that I absolutely love: thought life, even though mine can be kind of scary at times. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Rhonda. Okay, Rhonda George Denniston, welcome to the Desuckify Work podcast.
Oh man, thanks for having me. What a name. Desuckify.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it. Hopefully we can help people desuckify. I think you're doing that already in the work you do. So I'd love for you to just take a moment and tell everyone what you do and how you came to be doing it.
Sure. I am at TBWA Worldwide. So I'm part of the global team. And the way I like to describe TBWA Worldwide is we create a buffet and invite all of the agencies around the collective to partake in the buffet. And one of the offerings is global learning and development. And so basically, to put it in plain English, is all of the different disciplines are led in the worldwide team. And so you're responsible for stewarding if it's our strategy, our creative from a global perspective. But all of the agencies operate somewhat independently. So that's why I like to refer to TBWA Worldwide as the buffet. You come in and you take what's best for your local agency.
I like that. Yeah. I've got my shirt here to represent. This was in New York.
I love that.
Yeah, I was there 2006, 7, and then again in 2010, a couple of relatively short stints, but it was fun. There's definitely an energy to that world that's really interesting, appealing, and I think has managed to last in an interesting way. There's a lot of agencies that have popped in and out, but I feel like the TWA network, and Chiat in particular, from my experience, held its ground pretty well over the years.
Oh, for sure. As a collective, it's over 50 years. That and Chiat LA and Chiat Day New York, those are staples in the collective. So for sure.
How'd you find your way into the learning and development space?
Oh my gosh, that's an interesting question. I started at TBWA Worldwide as executive assistant to the global CFO.
Okay.
And one evening I got a knock on my cubicle, and it was the global CMO who offered me a role in her team as a project manager. And I think what that did in terms of working with the marketing team, it allowed me to see just everything across TBWA. And I noticed that TBWA always had a very strong learning culture, but it was more around, the creatives would gather, the strategists would gather, and it was siloed. And then what would happen is, those learnings stayed with the attendees. And so they were pretty senior attendees. So it wasn't really distilled down just by the nature of how they gathered. And that presented an opportunity for me to start setting my sights on what if. At TBWA, I've been given an opportunity to always craft the job that I wanted. So wherever there was a gap and I had an interest, I would simply put together a deck and sell it into my manager. So that's how I went through
Love that.
different paces. But it was definitely, I said, as far as a learning culture, TBWA always had a very strong learning culture. It just wasn't systematized.
And a couple of things in there that I love. Recognizing the culture and then thinking about ways to systematize it is a really wonderful insight. And also, this idea of crafting the job you want is really interesting. It's always wonderful when a place provides room for that. And I would say, in general, that's probably not bad advice for anybody to think about their career that way, right? What is the job you want? And don't be afraid to ask for it. Obviously, companies can do something on their end to, like I said, create that space. But what did you notice that sort of said, I think I can craft this thing and start to build something that I really want to do?
I think in our industry, we definitely have a debt culture, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and so that's the way creative ideas were always sold in.
Mhm.
And really, again, to TBWA's credit, it's a place of innovation. So I've always noticed that people coming around in terms of pitching ideas internally for buy-in.
Yeah.
So I was sending a beautifully crafted deck and just a way of really bringing others along. And so
Yeah.
that was the roadmap. That
Mhm.
showed me the behavior, the model, like you can definitely do it. And I encourage anyone right now, like the title may not exist, and it
Mhm.
doesn't mean because the title doesn't exist that you cannot create a role. It's
Mhm.
simply in terms of, is there a real need? And are
Mhm.
you the person to fill that need? And
Yeah.
how will you fill that need?
Yeah. And it feels like that comes down to a certain level of self-awareness, under self-awareness and other awareness. Self-awareness to understand where do my skills and strengths lie, as well as my passions and my values and my drive to think about
For
the
sure.
job you might want. And then there's the, am I aware of what's needed? How did you tune that dial for yourself?
Oh, it didn't exist, so the need was there, right? And
Mm,
I think it's really just pulling out from what was already existing. So we're already doing this, but
mm,
what happens is we're not doing it in a way that it filters down to others. And
mm,
then part of it was also just sheer luck. At the time, too, what was also bubbling up is that in the Asia Pacific region, they'd had a successful program that they wanted to then bring up to the global level
mm.
that
Okay.
they were proposing at the same time. So it was, oh, we're already doing this on a global scale. We're just not labeling it as a learning and development program. And
Mm,
we haven't found a way for this to then penetrate throughout the collective. At that time, we were a network. So then for those learnings to distill throughout the network or the collective, it's a need. So the
mhm.
need was there, the
Yeah.
gap was there. Am I the person to fill that gap? How? This is the thing. And personal branding is now a big buzzword.
Sure.
But at the time, I was one who was trusted as an executive assistant and as a project manager, delivering things on time, being that person. You leave
Mhm.
it with me, it's going to get done.
Yeah.
So just having that reputation of getting things done then
Mhm.
allowed me to be the one that they would trust with this
Mm.
somewhat new endeavor.
Yeah, I really like that. There's a good insight in there, which for all the personal branding and all the flash that can have,
Yeah.
like the foundation of it is show up, be accountable, be trustworthy. You never
Yeah.
really know who's noticing.
Oh, for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah.
That's foundational to any role, right?
Yeah.
Just show up, get it done. And
Yeah.
I think where the personal branding comes in now is you can't only get it done. Now you have to get it done and say it's done.
Yes. I think it's nice because it certainly offers people a voice and a way to shine a light on themselves where maybe it was difficult in other times, but it also feels like it can lead to people talking about getting things done, even if they didn't get things done.
For sure. What also happens, like we have a program called the Coach's Corner. One of the questions that always a recurring question or a recurring issue is, hey, someone else is taking recognition for that work. And I would always say to that person, you also have a platform where you can talk about the work you're doing. I think right now it's also our responsibility to talk about the work we're doing, to talk about the company that we work for in a manner that's like positive, to shine a positive light on your company and yourself.
Yeah, I think we can get a little lost in that and not realize that we have that voice and we have that platform and we have that opportunity. There's also there's something in what you were saying there that was striking me as well. This idea of, I want to call it like collective ownership of work.
Mm.
On the creative side in particular, this is both a challenge and I think an opportunity, right? Because so much of how you get defined, and I was a writer, a copywriter, and then creative director, and it's what did you do, right?
Yeah.
So that leads you to want to own it fully. But the reality of the work has always been, and I think it's much more so now, it really is collective.
Yeah.
We would work as a team at my last jobs, and we would just, so like where the ideas began and ended, not always so clear. And I think the trick then becomes like, how do you get the credit that you need to further your career while also acknowledging the fact that it's a team sport that we're playing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think speak to your role or why you're proud of it, and also acknowledge your team.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's a collaborative effort and really trying to find exactly where your fingerprints
Yeah.
are along the way could be a little tricky. And also because there's several other fingerprints coming into it. It's where did the idea start? Where did it end? Where were you in the process? Like, I think it's really speak to the work, the effort, the energy that you've placed into it and why you're so proud of it, and definitely bring the others along because rarely is there anything except from, gosh, maybe if someone is writing an original story,
Yeah.
an author,
Yeah.
that you can just really, this is my work. And even then, you were influenced by
Mhm.
other people. So I think there's a way, and if you have self-awareness, and if you really want who generosity is a value, shine the light on everyone else, man.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because even as you're saying it, there's an energy coming from you that is very much, I want to call it amplifying energy. And it's like when you shine the light on others, it actually makes you shine brighter.
Oh, for sure. For
And that's,
sure.
I think there's a fear that's not true. Yeah.
Now, it depends on where you are, right? So I can definitely have empathy for maybe a more junior person on
Yeah.
the team. Gosh, you put in that work and you
Mm.
want it. But I think the more you can really, we did this,
Mhm.
especially as the leader of the team, you'll attract others because
Yeah.
they want to get a part of that. We did this.
Yeah. And I think as leaders, it's a responsibility to invite more junior people into that conversation. Sometimes they just need that one little dash of permission to be like, oh, I can talk about this too. Okay. And
Yeah.
start to build that muscle for them or help them build that muscle. What's your take on the state of the world of work right now?
Ooh. You know what? We are and always have been in a state of VUCA. Like the world and therefore work has always been in a state of VUCA.
Yeah.
For the ones who weren't feeling it, you weren't feeling it, but now we're more interconnected and more collaborative, and the world is just flat,
Yep.
figuratively speaking. And so the effects of everything are being felt and amplified. So I would say, just as humans, with all of the change going on, geopolitical changes, technological changes, there's a lot of anxiety,
Mhm.
baseline anxiety. So that's just what we're operating with. I think we have to get comfortable with that. We
Mhm.
have to, there's anxiety, and still, pulling from Maya Angelou, I rise, we rise. This other thing is going on, and still, we have to show up. You have to show up.
Yeah.
It's just good for your overall health. but we need to find ways in which I think to compartmentalize.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation. The world is flattened, metaphorically. No shame to my flat earther friends out there, but I think we're going to speak in metaphor here. We're so aware of everything.
Yeah.
Like we feel everyone. And it's hard to take that on and not have the weight of that on us. And so this idea of compartmentalizing or finding ways to go, it's okay that I feel these things, but I don't have to
feel it right now in
constantly
this moment.
have it with me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's a time, and then you can find ways of navigating your day to be like, okay, maybe sit down at the end of the day and allow that to soak through me and feel it, and whatever comes up. At some points, you gotta, like you said, you need to rise. And is that reality influencing the way the organization is thinking about learning and development?
Oh, it certainly influences the way I think about it and the way that we have designed the programs. I think before their professional development programs, they're personal development programs, right? So it's giving people life skills ahead of, and I think we haven't come up with a new way of phrasing hard and soft skills. But in the beginning, at the end, in the middle of the day, we're dealing with humans till we're dealing also
with robots
with our AI twins and everything else. But while humans are still in the mix, I think we have to prioritize our employees thriving. And that's what I have prioritized in how we design all of our experiences. They're whole person experiences where we're going to bring the full mosaic of you into the space. And at this time, we're going to deal with the work and how we can make that better, and really how we can get people into a place of allowing them to use their imagination and creativity. For you to get to that place, our product is creativity. So for you to get to that place, we first have to really, I think, know how to bring the temperature down and then raise it up, and just really, you have to do that with some, I would say, some precision and being able to read the room in the moment. Yeah,
there's a perception and a sensing skill there, and then on the flip side, it's a influencing skill, not like influencing to do what you want, but to recognize that we have influence over the rooms we're in.
Oh, for sure. We have, and this one of our coaches, Bonnie Wen, and she says this, it's you have more agency than or you take possession of, right? And that's also dealing with personal responsibility and accountability. And so when we design the programs, we allow people the room to bring their whole person, their personal ambitions into the room. And really, sometimes we get down to the nitty-gritty of what does that look like in your day-to-day activities? Because really it's how then do you create the space to show up when you walk through the doors of your agency? How do you create the space before getting to the agency so that you can walk into the agency feeling like fully alive? So, we care about what happens in your home life, not to be there in terms of getting into your personal business, but definitely would want you to be thriving across the board in the whole person of you.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about from a business perspective, this idea of inviting a whole person in. I think it gets sometimes maybe misinterpreted, and then maybe from the individual perspective, also sometimes confused about what that means, right? I think as a business, there can be a fear around like the whole person comes in, and then am I responsible for that whole person? And how much, like you said, like getting into the personal life, do I have to manage that in some way? And then as an individual, I think it can sometimes feel like permission to just throw it all out there, unfiltered, unvarnished,
Right.
like maybe excuse our less than ideal behaviors because that's just me being me.
But you still have a responsibility to be civil, to be human, to be
Yeah.
decent. And I think I've found in my experience, because it's somewhat of nuanced,
Mm,
to your point, there's some trepidation initially, and we've designed the programs around that to
mm,
include that.
mm.
And so when we travel to those personal ambitions or your personal goals, or what may not be working for you personally to fit your profession, it's done. I think we've created a beautiful container for it.
Yeah.
And I think we've found the right balance. In fact, we've just had 2 weeks in Madrid doing leadership development programs, in-person programs. And I left feeling quite fulfilled in terms of seeing how the content and the flow of everything was just really absorbed.
There's an art to what you're doing. I think in that is maybe the challenge that a lot of folks in the learning and development space are probably navigating. There's a science to it, which is create the thing, provide the thing, go through the thing. You take away some stuff and you bring that back to the job. There's this linear thinking around it. And then what you're
Mm.
describing to me feels more like an art, which is, as you described, creating the container and creating a space where people can absorb what's being shared. How do you manage or deal with that side of things in general, that it is human beings entering this space? And as much as we can go, I created X number of programs and it's structured in a certain way, there's still people moving through it and being all people-y all over it. And how do you deal with that?
We haven't had, I think, to deal with the people-y part, as in, this is such a needed outlet.
Mm,
I think it catches you somewhat by surprise in terms of how soulful it's
mm,
created, how
yeah,
thoughtful and how intentional we are,
yeah,
that really it re-energizes that person and
mm,
really just engenders them to their agency and to the person who nominated them for the program. So it
mm,
has that positive effect. Initially, we didn't start this way. Initially, we were like, this will not be a tree hugging a program. This is going to be about making you a better worker,
yeah,
better leader,
mhm,
better manager. And then the pandemic happened,
yeah,
and there's a difference in how they showed up. And
mhm,
there's a need for us to be tree huggy
yeah,
and for us to go beyond the surface, for it to really get personal, for us to really help our people to be the best that they can be and not just say it, but
yeah,
really create the conditions and the environment for them to be the best. And one of the other things that's really, I think, maybe one of the accelerants for that is the opportunity. You're coming together as a global cohort, and
mhm,
that's one of the things too, right?
yeah,
And when you really, the programs are designed, the social aspects of them are
mhm,
designed really to connect.
yeah,
So it's not only you're able to learn from your peers in the classroom and outside of the classroom,
mhm,
and everyone leaves with the understanding, you know what? We have the same issues.
mm,
Speak different languages. You solve differently. It's the same challenges we have. And
mhm,
I think in this environment, especially because it's global, because you're meeting someone from, if it's from India, someone from China, from Belgium. And really, when we get to discussions, you have the same challenges I do.
yeah.
It's just really, that's one of the things that really helps you to lower the temperature in the room.
I
Because
can
you're
imagine.
coming in,
Yeah.
I'm the only one
What
with this.
what do you know about my stuff? Yeah.
And you start having these conversations and these coaching sessions, and it's, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm having that challenge too.
That's very unifying, I would imagine. And the phrase that comes to my mind, and I'm not even sure why, but soul soothing is what comes to my mind. Like
Love,
that knowledge of connection, that not
yeah,
knowledge, I think it really is more of an absorption, to use your word, of it.
yeah,
And I think what you're acknowledging, and it's interesting how COVID spurred this, I think for most of us to see that connection between the tree hugging, soul soothing work and the fact that not only is it needed because we were showing up differently, I would argue like it's needed because it's the best way to actually achieve the results that people have always cared about, which is the profit and the growth and all the big stuff that leads to dollars, right? It's all integrated.
oh, for sure. The thing is, more than ever right now, we have to be collaborative, right? Knowledge, the speed of knowledge, everything is moving so fast that
Yeah.
I need you so that we can finish this off together. It goes back to that idea, how many hands or how many fingerprints are across that idea.
Uh-huh.
The more diverse ideas, the different people that I can tap into,
Mm.
it's the richer that solution becomes, right? That
Yeah.
offering becomes. And that's what our aim is in terms of leadership development programs.
I like that. I've had a couple of different guests on previously who spoke about some version of group intelligence. I think that's
Yeah.
what you're tapping into is one of the ways we're going to continue to evolve humanity is to find ways to bring that group intelligence together. And to the extent that we've maybe done it in localized settings is interesting. But now you're talking about doing it at a global scale where people from different cultural backgrounds can also connect around that shared sense of, oof, we're
That
all
shared value.
in it.
And then come to a place of agreement that, gosh, we want this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to come back to one thought, and you were nodding to it a little bit earlier again, too, but this idea of crafting your own career, I'm thinking about it in particular, certainly from my own experience working with a lot of juniors. And even as a coach, I've been coaching some more junior folks recently. And what I notice in that cohort, maybe more than some of us coming up who were like, I'm a writer and I'm a writer and I'm a writer, is more like, I'm a writer, but I also like film stuff and I play music or whatever else, all these different things that I do. And I'm like, I can't find a home for all of it, but I want to. When I talk to people who are maybe like, I can do the account thing, but I'm also strategic and I have a little bit of creative chops. And like, is there room, particularly in big structured agencies where it's you've got headcount and you've got it attached to certain specific job titles? Like, how would you suggest somebody who's maybe on the younger side or at least more junior in their job, like start that conversation around, hey, I've got this stuff and I want to bring more of it to work?
I think using their platform. So
Mhm.
first off, does your social media reflect what your passions are?
Mm, yeah.
So does your LinkedIn also showcase your
Mm,
side muscle?
yeah.
Yeah, that's Rob Schwartz. I'm going to credit that to Rob Schwartz. I would say first, it's that give people an easy bridge to come over to whatever it is that you're wanting to grow into. And definitely having the conversations and then raising your hand for the thing that maybe no one else wants to do, but it
Mhm.
aligns with the purpose that you're after.
Yeah.
Raising your hand and then seeking out, and it might not be in your department, and it
Mhm.
might even be just totally outside of your region, but seeking out opportunities that would allow you to fulfill that other side, that other passion that you have that
Mm,
really lines up under the gosh, you're living a creative life. Your
yeah.
title by day might be strategist.
Mhm.
Title at night is, oh my gosh, I'm a guitarist. How can that find its way into your everyday life?
I love just the general notion of raising your hand. I think there's something so simple but empowering, and it connects back to that idea that we actually do have agency, even when we don't feel
Yeah.
it. It also, like this idea of the side muscle, which I love. So credit to Rob on that. It reminds me of something, another former guest on the show, his name's Josh Weiss, and he's a creative director, art director, and he created like a sort of an award show or ongoing awards celebration for people's side hustles, as he
Mm.
described it. It made me wonder, and this is tricky because you're on the company dime, but I'm like, is there opportunities for companies to invite that in a little bit and celebrate the creativity and the interesting thinking and ideas that people are bringing outside of work, not just to, like you said, give it that tree hugger feel good thing, but
Right.
also to be like, what don't we know about our people right now that we could know, maybe should know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Shite LA and New York does that.
Yeah.
So New York definitely celebrates the side hustles. By this person is an X by day and does
Oh,
bacon or
nice.
whatever by night. They've
Oh,
always
cool.
done that.
Yeah.
And man, Shite LA, I am forever like FOMO whenever I see look at their Instagram. I'm like, if I wasn't with Worldwide, I'd want to work for Shite LA.
Yeah.
Just because they celebrate their people in such unique ways and they
Hmm.
celebrate the whole person and then definitely they give them opportunities in which to bring those outside passions into the agency. So there've been
Nice.
instances where people have had connections with bands and they were able to bring those bands in. So it's, if maybe you are an account manager by day, but band manager at night or a
Yeah.
promoter, there are ways that you can think outside the box. We're the disruption company for crying out loud. Think
I love that.
think of a way of, okay, how can I do this? So I think it's just exercising a bit of imagination versus trying to fit it into an existing,
Hmm.
yeah.
I really love that sort of side comment about we're the disruption company because there's permission in that, right? And there's an invitation in that sort of says, come in here and stir shit up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually just a good lesson for any company, particularly agencies who a lot of agencies can start to look the same over time as the letters get combined and mergers and this
Yeah.
and this. And it's, but finding a way to have some thing that you hang your hat on. And TBWA with disruption has been that for a long time. And I think there's credit to continuing to hang on to that. It's to me, there's an invitation to every agency to go, what's your thing?
Yeah.
And then when people show up, not only is that the thing that like, it's not just a marketing thing. So companies can say, I want some disruption in my life. Although, yes, but also like from an employee experience standpoint, it's like you're stepping into the disruption space or you're stepping into the whatever, the wonder space or the wisdom space, whatever your thing is.
Yeah.
I'd love to see more of that out there. I want to speak about one other agency particular thing, although I'm sure this shows up in every business to a degree, but this might be a challenge that you encounter on the L&D side. Like there's an adversarial thing that happens between certain departments and then even between agency and client at times. It's almost baked into our muscles when we encounter each other. Account creative is the classic one, right? That there's tension there. And I would argue there could be good tension in that. That's okay, but it can get beyond good. And the same thing with the client. There can be a nice, healthy push and pull, but at times it feels like enemy type
Yeah.
thing. Like, how do you deal with that in your world if you do at all?
I tell you what, we have been working towards breaking down those silos between the disciplines when it comes to cohort programs. One way that we do it, starting from, I would say, our junior level, we have a program called Right Academy, and basically it's a team-based program.
Okay.
For that program, people are coming in again, it's a global cohort, and they're put into teams. And the biggest thing at that program is like you forget your title. Check your title at the door. You're
Mm,
coming in here, you're a team of equals. It's for them to learn the full idea process from brief to pitch,
mhm.
right? What happens? And they do pitch a real,
Okay.
they do solve a real brief and pitch it into the client.
Nice.
When you're in that environment, we want to teach you it's all about collaboration. So in that sense, it's not my idea, right? It's our idea.
Mhm.
It's really breaking down the walls between, oh, the strategist stops here, and now here's where creative comes in.
Yeah.
And we continue that as far as a mindset throughout all of our cohort programs.
How does it show up on the ground, so to speak? Do you notice the differences? Do you notice people showing up that way when it's a real project and all the craziness and the VUCA stuff shows up and we're all
Yeah. I
frenzied.
think, well, you know what? In being real, I think we tend to then default back to what we
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
take time for that really to permeate across the collective. But that's the thing. And I think it's desired, and I think we know we need it. And at the same time, we would need to learn how to pull back to allow people who are have more proclivity to
Hmm.
do what it is that
Yeah.
they've been assigned to do. So it comes into this thing where curiosity and self-awareness, those are two biggest anchors that we
Yeah.
we really need how to learn how to balance those as individuals.
Mm.
Okay, I'm noticing what's coming up right now, and maybe this is an opportunity for me to either step back or lean in.
Yeah. The way you're describing it, it feels like a dance. And there's times where that, like, the movement is all just like perfectly synced. And then there's times where somebody's off and doing their own little thing in their own little world. And then maybe people are noticing it and getting all excited about that. But then it moves back. There's a flow that you're
Yeah,
experiencing and an ability to be okay, whether you're just with that collective kind of move or you're like, I'm going to go over here and
and
do my own thing. Yeah.
yeah. One of the things that we incorporate into our Rising Leaders programs and the First Time Managers programs, flamenco. Now, the thing about flamenco is it's not rehearsed.
Okay. Wow.
So the dancers aren't like, you don't know the moves. It's based on the beat.
Yeah. Wow.
So you're going based on the rhythm. And if we bring that into life, we show up, right?
Mm.
We don't know what's going to be the temperature or what's going to be the pulse of the beat of
Yeah.
life that day. But because we have been trained and we've practiced discipline, we know how to move and we're hearing the beat and we need to move with the
Hmm.
beat. And so that's how, in terms of taking one of these things that can just look like, oh, it's a social event, and you bring it into in terms of a way of analyzing how we need to show up and
Mm.
what we can model.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you bring that flamenco into some of the work you do? Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. What I love about it, first of all, it feels disruptive and different. So it feels on brand, but it also feels so needed. And again, not that you'd have to do it that way, but finding ways of being in the world we're in now, both at a sort of grand scale of the world, but also just like our own world and its feelings of volatility and all that stuff, and getting more so as AI and all the other stuff dive
Yeah.
in. Like, it feels like that's the thing that we all need is some ability to be attuned to the rhythms and all that stuff, to be attuned to our own reaction to
Yeah.
it, and then find a way to move within that.
Of
I mean,
being.
yeah, that's a life skill as much as it is a work skill. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And that's why I love having our programs and everything we do be a whole person experience.
Yeah.
And to deal with whatever we're going to come into that day, I think having the ability to really compartmentalize is, you have to be selective. All right, today I will not look at the news,
Mhm.
right? Or if it's today is my day to really quickly take in what's going on around the world, just being intentional about what you want the day to be, in spite of the world's going to do what the world's going to do. It does it.
Mhm.
So, how can you operate in a way that's really best for you rather than just going along with the day? And I
Mhm.
think too many times we're not intentional. And that's one of the things that we really want to drive home,
Mhm.
really being intentional personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been more aware as I've gotten older and maybe started working as a coach of how unintentional I was at various points of my life and just allowed myself to get swept
Drift.
into it.
Mm.
And then there were these moments of clarity where I was like, oh, I was clearly steering the ship there. But even just recognizing the need for that, I think allows us to step into it more. We're going to have moments where we're swept. That's I think, human
Yeah.
nature, but you can come back quicker if you've trained your mind to think through that intentional lens.
The mindfulness training is definitely a huge factor. And it's actually one of the things that we also bring in as a major component into our programming.
I like that. There's another thing you're putting out into the world that I really love. It's called Curiosity Connections. And
Ah, yes.
I want to touch on this for a couple of reasons. One, I think those are like two of my favorite words. Curiosity has always been a core value of mine, and connection has been an emerging theme. I think maybe post-COVID, like a lot of us, there's this disconnection that we felt, and then this desire to reconnect. And so I love those words. And then on some level, I also think there's a bit of a crisis around each of those words, meaning there's a sort of a connection crisis in people struggling to figure out how to be with each other and really see each other. And then maybe even a curiosity crisis. And I'd frame that around this idea of we have so much information, we can feel like we know everything. It's all just there, as opposed to the beauty of not knowing and then embracing wonder and curiosity to just dig and explore. So that's the perspective I'm coming from. But I'm curious for you, how did you come to this idea, and what are you hoping it brings into the world?
It's being built as the unnetworking space. And so it came up as a pain point for me.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. And so doing the big networking conferences is anxiety ridden for me because it's so performative. Like I'm intentionally going in, having rehearsed my elevator pitch, having mapped out who it is that I need to connect with. And I wanted a space where, you know what? We don't have to do all of that. I wanted it to be an intimate space where we can see each other and be genuinely like curious about each other. And I think one of the key ingredients to that is not having this thing where we're siloed by industry or experience level, but just really at the heart of who we are. We have, if it's core issues that we all experience. So why would you not want to have the perspective from someone who is maybe a junior? So for instance, at our last gathering, The Power of Our Difference, you had questions and conversations around starting a family all the way up to I'm thinking of retiring and I'm scared. And I think in any other formatting, it would be, oh, let's just keep the retirees or soon to be retirees together.
Yeah.
And the
5
people
steps to easy retirement.
Oh, come on, man. Let's do away with that. We're humans. And then the thing is, we can learn from anyone at any time if we are really interested.
Yeah.
There's something there.
Yeah. What you've described, a couple of things jumped out at me. One, for whatever reason, it brought me back to a trip that I took with my family to Ireland years ago. It was 26 years ago now. And what I remember being blown away by was you'd walk into a pub and their drinking age was 18. So you had everybody from 18 to 88 all in there. And it struck me as so different. I was in the New York area at the time, and I just remember you'd walk into a bar and it was kind of like your cohort. It was like, okay, if 30 at the time, it's probably going to go to a bar that's like mostly 30 somethings, late 20s. And I think embrace this idea that there's so much to love and know about each other at any point in life. And actually, like, that conversation that could happen between somebody who's about to retire and somebody who's about to start a family might be the most valuable conversation for each of those people, and by extension, anyone who gets to hear it. Versus two retirees or near retirees sitting there going, what do I do? And they're missing those voices, right? Yeah. That's really cool. How is it structured? Like, what's the actual sort of experience of one of these sessions that you put together?
It's limited to 24 people. That's one. And the way that you're invited is we have a core group and they then recommend someone else. So it's circular in that way.
Yeah, nice.
And it's really, we break bread. So that's the other thing. I find food to be a way of having people just let their barriers down. So we have brunch and there's a guide, and that person will guide the conversations. And it's really just the prompts.
Okay.
And then that opens the floor to then this is what I'm grappling with
Mm.
around the whatever the topic is. And so yeah, it's I would say like a lazy brunch, if it's so to speak,
Okay.
or an extended brunch with conversations. Enter in and you're coming into an environment that's warm because again, I just one of the things I hate is like you
Mm.
show up at a big conference and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I get it.
Right? So then, yeah, so we dispense with all of that, but we're going to know who you are, and then we're going to introduce you to someone else who you
Mm.
should have that conversation with. We provide the questions, so you don't even have to think of icebreakers.
Mm.
So
Nice.
everything is done to facilitate curiosity and conversations. And so people leave. It's one person said, "Oh my gosh, I left and I spoke to so many people. I met so many people, and I don't know what anyone does, and it feels strange in a good way."
Yeah, we're so culturally trained, right?
What do
To
you do?
we need to know,
Where do you
right?
work?
And the beauty of that is, I think, at least as I hear it, it removes a filter in our listening, right? It's like somebody says, I'm an accountant. Like, I'm going to put up some filters around that and I'm going to scaffold their story around that as opposed to just, I'm Susie. Okay. And then you've got a question. It's whatever it is.
Yeah.
What's your favorite fruit or whatever the heck the question is. And then you connect around that. And then you get to know a person in just a way I think we're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, we know that there's a loneliness epidemic,
Yeah.
right? The other thing I found coming out of COVID is initially, and this is on the work side, our people had a very challenging time connecting when we returned to in-person programming.
Mm-hmm.
So those initial cohorts were a bit muted
Yeah.
in terms of their exchanges.
I get it.
Yeah, and totally. And then a lot of people like, oh, I'm introverted.
Mm.
And typically for the programs, a lot of people would self-identify as extroverted. And I also started wondering, are the introverts pretending to be extroverts?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this is just really, how can we really just dispense of who we are as far as careers? Because we're much more than what we do,
Yeah.
and really tap into how are we living? How are we living?
Yeah, I think I've heard somebody or a few people use this phrase, but it's we're human beings, not human doings. And like what I hear you is let's connect to the being side of
Yeah.
us. Who are we? Not as much what do we do. That doesn't mean like doing might not come up in the story, but it's more through the lens of I like to do this thing because it allows me to show up in this way. I love that you're tapping into the sort of introvert side of things too. I would say I lean introvert as well. I always score borderline on the Myers-Briggs
All
test,
right.
but I'm usually on the I side versus the extrovert side. So I have some of that extrovert energy, although at times it does feel like I'm pretending to be extroverted. You described the conference kind of thing, and I'm like, oof, that energy of walking into a giant like ballroom filled with 500 people and like it's for me it can be almost paralyzing. It's just
Yeah.
it's like on some level it's I'm having the people watching pleasure, but the idea of I have to engage
And then you have to jump in.
and get into this thing and it's I don't know the way you do that. So I love that you've created something where it takes all that friction out. It's a
Yeah.
smaller scale, like you even provide the questions and all that and allow people to just be. That's, yeah, I think we need more of that. Where are you hosting these?
Oh, these are primarily in New York City
Okay.
initially. We do have plans in terms of expanding, but for right now, I
Yeah.
think New York City.
Okay.
Yeah. The upcoming gathering in September, it's around mental health.
Oof,
Yeah,
yeah.
so the
Mm,
theme is minding your business. Cheeky way of us examining our thought life.
that phrase, our thought life, that's just a really cool thought of how to think about it. But that's cool. I hope people who are watching or listening, if you're in the New York area or gonna be,
Yeah.
I invite people to do it. I love the idea that this could expand elsewhere. And I'll even just raise my hand and go, I might be happy to help with that if you're ever thinking I'm in Phoenix. So
Hey,
if you're ever thinking of like
all right. Let's
expanding
do
over
it.
this way, like count me in as one of your foot soldiers if you
Okay.
need us. Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question. You talked about your career and you talked about this idea of self awareness and how you came into where you are. And what was there one thing or what have you learned about yourself that changed everything for you in terms of how you think about your career or had the biggest impact?
Ooh, that's a deep question.
Got to keep you on your toes.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I think I love this thing. The book is by Maria Forleo.
Okay.
Maria Forleo, everything is figure outable. I think before she had that phrase, it's one of those things that I think has been my superpower. You know what? Now, it doesn't mean initially it might not stress me out. So initially I would take it in with a
Yeah.
what the?
Yeah.
But on the out breath, it's usually, and there's a solve. I simply have
Hmm.
to find it.
Mm.
Right?
I love that. Yeah. That sounds like a great book. I want to read that because that notion of things being figure outable is
Yeah.
we can get trapped in a place where you don't see that pretty easily. And it reminds me of a phrase, another guest, Ryan Berman, who worked in advertising and now has his own business called Courage Brands. And he's
I love
coined a
that
phrase
name.
which is basically just a mashup of words, but it's figure it out ability. That's a
Yeah.
skill. Like to have figure it out
Yeah.
ability
Yeah.
is to be able to take the initial blow, like you said, of like, wow, and then exhale into, okay, I know there's a solution here. Let's start noodling on it and let's start figuring it out. I think, yeah, beautiful skill for anybody. And I do think that some folks have that more as a superpower, as you mentioned for yourself. I have a
Yeah.
client who I see that in, and you got that thing. Take it with you wherever you go. I know I've asked you a fair share of questions already. I wanted to give you a chance if you have a question to put to our audience.
I do. And this is because I've been ruminating on it, and Curiosity Connections, our next gathering is around this. I would love to know what is the loudest voice in your thought life right now? Yeah.
Mm.
Because I
Mm.
tell you, sometimes our minds get really messy.
Yeah.
And, and when we allow it to just keep going. So,
Yeah.
what is the loudest voice coming up for you right now?
Mm.
And is it serving you or is it hurting you?
Yeah, that's the body blow right there. Because I thought about it, and my loudest voice is the one that's comparing myself to others.
Mm,
And I'm like, oh, well, how come that person's doing that and you're not doing that? That voice is there. And
yeah.
I know that voice is not serving me, but like I keep letting them tag along.
Right. Why?
I don't know. It's such an interesting thing, right? Because if a client of mine said that, it would be so obvious. And I could like work with that notion of why is that and what's going on and what are you getting from it? And I think that's ultimately the question because somewhere it is serving me, even if it's in a perverse way, right? That's what I
Mm,
think the truth is when we keep some of those voices around. It's like I'm getting something from it, but it might be something that ultimately doesn't serve me. One thought that comes up is, am I getting the ability to stay where I am, which might feel comfortable, even though I have desires to go elsewhere? And by telling myself these stories of comparison, does that freeze me a little bit?
mm,
I don't know if that's it, but that feels like a thread to pull on. And I wonder, yeah, I love that question though. I think for anybody, just to pay attention to what are those voices in your thought life. And then the is it serving you is such a good question because I think we allow so much into our psyche that ultimately is not serving us, even if it's pretending to.
Yeah. And then is there a way of maybe reframing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll noodle on that one because I love that you got me down that path because I think it's a useful path for me today, actually, to just spend some time with. This is the Desuckify Work podcast. So I'm curious if you could wave a magic wand and just fully desuckify the world of work. What does that world look like?
Okay. I think the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? Typically extroverts, and I'm not picking on you extroverts, but
Get it.
but extroverts are really great at getting the oil because
Yeah.
they would have articulated over and over again, whatever it is the need is.
Yeah.
I think if I could wave a wand, I would find a way for introverts to be heard in their way of being, and then identified for more leadership roles. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I know there is definitely a bias towards extrovert in that space. And I think, sometimes there's this feeling that introversion is a thing to fix. And as introverts, I think you can feel that I can't be that. So I'm going to pretend to be an extrovert, to your point earlier, as opposed to certainly as an organization, like what is it that introverts bring through the inherent way that they show up in the world that we need more of? And how do we connect to that more in the same way that maybe we more naturally connect to what the extroverts bring, both because it's more right in our face, and that's wonderful. But it does take a little more work, I think, to go, okay, how do we want to set the table so that introverts want to come to it and then show all their goodness? Yeah. I love that. That feels pretty awesome to me. I like to have a little bit of fun before we close out. Some silliness. If you've listened to the show, you've heard some sound effects and some cats and some other stuff. That's my world, but I'm going to invite you in. What sound effect would you like to share? And whatever it is, we'll throw it in the mix on the show. It'll be there.
All right.
Yeah.
So this one is when I'm being, like, if I'm getting ready to be naughty or getting ready to be cheeky, and it's just my impression of it, rubbing up the hands, like the pinky in the brain kind of scenario, like.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's that. I can definitely say I haven't had that sound effect yet from anybody. So I love that we're 85 plus episodes in, and that's definitely a new one. And it's so fun because I get it. I get what you're saying. Like I can feel it in the sound and even in the body language. Yeah, I love that. All right, Rhonda, I'd love to give people a chance to connect with you. What's the best way for people to find out more about what you're doing and maybe connect and hear more about all the good stuff?
I'm on LinkedIn, Rhonda George Denniston. I'm on Instagram, Rhonda George. I did not update my name.
Got it.
I think those are the two.
Those are it. I will add those to the show notes so it makes it easy for people to find you and learn more.
Oops, Curiosity Connections.
Yeah.
We're on LinkedIn and Instagram as well.
Okay, awesome. There's a website I know for Curiosity Connections as well. So I'll share all of that.
CuriosityConnections.com. Lovely.
Yeah, this was such a fun conversation, Rhonda. I love your energy and I love the way you think about learning in this holistic, human-centered way, the whole human. I really like some of just the nuggets and insights. The idea of having a thought life really struck me. I hadn't really heard that phrasing before. So thank you for bringing all that good stuff to the show and helping us on this path towards making work suck a little less for folks out there.
TJ, I want to thank you so much. It was really, I think you held the space really lightly for me to be here.
Nice.
And I really love the thoughtful questions that you asked. So thank you for having me. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, TJ.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the Desuckify Work podcast. And a huge thanks to Rhonda for bringing empathy, light, and optimism to the show. You can follow Rhonda on LinkedIn and check out the Curiosity Connections site at curiosityconnections.com. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to dive deep into some of your own challenges at work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session where we can explore new desuckified possibilities for your future. Bye, everyone.